All right, so 6:32 p.m. Monday, May 3rd, 2021. I call for a selectmen meeting to order. No particular comments today, but we do give public input. Agenda item number 0 for anybody who has anything that they want to say for regarding any item that's not on the agenda tonight. If you want, you can make a couple of comments right now. So does anybody have any comments that they want to make on anything which is not on the agenda tonight? All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 1. This is, it's listed in the agenda as a public hearing, but it's not actually technically a public hearing. This is just an approval or an application for an entertainment license by Manchester Bath and Tennis Club. We processed this last time around at the meeting a couple of weeks ago. There were some questions about it. Since then, the COVID rules for the timeframes are projected to change, and the application has been restructured somewhat to remove some of the concerns that some board members had a couple of weeks ago. So the updated application will have essentially normal activities within the upper deck of the clubhouse with reasonable separation between the individuals, and the concerts won't be spilling out onto the beach, so there won't be any issues with alcohol going out onto the beach. That's a substantive change to the application. And this is for a duet with one guitar player and one singer. So do board members have any questions? Or actually, Holly, I'll give you a moment if you have any comments you want to make before I turn the board loose on it.
Sure. I'm sure everyone had a chance to review what I submitted this time around. So if anyone does have any questions about it, I would be happy to answer them, but I think it seems a lot more conducive to the rules and easy to execute on my end, and I'd appreciate everyone's consideration. Thank you.
All right, board members. Becky, you go first.
No comment, seems straightforward. I think that the modifications have been very helpful.
Thank you.
And Harrison.
Thank you, Holly.
It looks fine to me.
John.
Yes. Yeah. No. Thank you, Holly. Yes. Everything looks in order, and obviously the rule changes have worked in your favor, I guess, a bit.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Jeff.
I'm all set.
Any comments from the public before I take a motion? All right, can I get a motion to approve the entertainment application from Manchester Bath and Tennis Club?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, roll call vote. Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner.
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank
too.
you, Holly.
Thank you for your patience, Holly.
Yep.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Now we're stuck. We're ahead of schedule. Filling the gap, I'm going to move up to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from April 20th, the Adele Quincy Irvin Citizenship Award, which is an award that we give once a year from the Board of Selectmen to a student in the Manchester Essex school who has shown some particular commitment to public service in their time during the school. And this is typically to a graduating senior. The award is secret and it's a surprise for the student when it's awarded. And so we vote on it without actually telling people who's getting the award each year. There's also a 2021 Arbor Day proclamation, a ratification of the police union contract, Um, the new police union contract is has some changes related to vacation time, overtime hours, and smaller COLAs for several years. This is a 1+3 year contract. Fewer vacation days, no more double time for forced overtime in exchange for, and all of this is in exchange for the higher incentive payments for the Quinn bill and a boost in officer in charge pay. And then the last thing in the consent agenda is a resignation letter from Parker Harrison from the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. He's been on that committee for quite some time. So I'll recommend that we send a letter of thanks to him. Any questions on the consent agenda? Questions, comments? Is there anything that anybody wants to pull out of the consent agenda before voting?
I'd like to pull out the union contract.
All right. All right, can I get a
Just-
motion?
Question, I thought Parker Harrison retired from 2 committees. And I, of course, don't have his letter in front of me.
You know
It
what?
was Bike Ped and the Open Space and Rec Committee, both.
Oh, you're right.
With that correction, I'm fine.
All right. So then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the ratification of the police union contract?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Jakes,
yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes,
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Um, All right, Jeff, what do you got on the union contract?
I don't want to open up the whole thing for discussion. There's just one issue that in the strikeouts related to the Quinn bill, the specification of degrees that apply to that provision in this contract dropped criminal justice degrees. So the language as it stands now means that they could have any degree and still apply for the provisions of that particular point in the contract. And I think the intent is that those are just criminal justice degrees.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jeff, that was not meant to be struck through, so.
I mean, it makes sense when you read the whole thing that it was struck out. But I think that it's important that that gets reinstated in the language.
Yes, no, I agree.
So with that provision, I'm happy to go ahead.
Right. So then I will take a motion to approve the ratification of the police union contract, amended to state that the degrees for the Quinn bill must be in the criminal justice field.
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor, roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner.
yes, and a big thank you to Greg.
Yes, thank you, Greg.
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes as well. So that concludes items 1 and 2. No, I'm sorry. Items 1 and the consent agenda. And I'm just wobbling around, speaking very slowly right now because for the first time in a very long time, we have got ahead of ourselves. So, town administrators report.
We go back to our regular agenda?
Well, we're a scooch early.
So I can go to my updates if you wish.
I'll tell you what I'll do. It's 2 minutes. So I'll start it early. And if anybody else comes into the meeting, I will start the presentation of this oath. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is a short-term paying guest application for 64 Norwood Avenue. So this is an application by Christine Matrona Barber. And Christine, do you want to discuss this at all? Your paperwork seems to be in order.
It's for the lower level apartment in my home, and the apartment's always been rented for, as a month-to-month rental. And we just wanted to kind of reach out and see if we could do an Airbnb and do something different for now.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board?
I do have a couple of questions. And I guess my question really is mostly around the parking, Christine.
Okay.
And now just looking at the on the maps, the town maps, it looks as if there's only parking on one side of the house, and if you're facing your house, the left side. Is that correct?
No, that's my poor drawing. So on the left side is the tenant's parking driveway. It's enough for 2, sometimes 3 cars if they pull up far enough. And if you look on the right side of my house, there's another driveway which is for my vehicles. So it's always been separate parking.
Okay. And this is just, are people, are they able to turn around in your driveway, or do they have to back out into Norwood?
No, they back out. Yep.
Okay, just because typically, and I know you've had it rental before, but typically that can present an issue, but that's not a Board of Selectmen issue. That's a planning board issue.
Okay.
Anyway, but no, as long as there's room for everybody to be parking, I do think that if it's possible for people to back into the driveway.
Okay, I
rather
can
than
make that be a
backing out.
policy. Sure. I can
Yeah,
have that
I
be
mean,
a
it's
policy.
just safer that way.
Right.
Great. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And Ann, any questions?
No.
John Round.
But I'd just like to put this in context, being fairly new to the Selectmen's Board, the Select Board here. I just wonder, how many of these have we gone through, say, in the past, say, couple of years? How many applications? I'm just curious.
Handful.
Oh, yeah, a handful, I would say.
All right. Just wanted some context. No
Mostly-
Eli?
questions specifically with regard to the application. It looks good.
Eli,
Yes.
may I make a comment?
Yeah.
I just want to thank the owner for bringing this forward. There are plenty of people who don't. So I just want to say thank you to Christine for, trying to do it the right way. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Jeff, any questions?
I have no questions.
I don't have any questions either. Any questions or comments from the public on the application for a short-term paying guest application of 64 Norwood Avenue? All right, hearing none, I will take a motion to approve the short-term paying guest application for 64 Norwood Avenue.
So moved.
Second,
So we'll call it John Round seconded. And Becky Jakes moved it. Roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes,
Mr. Round,
yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes,
Mr. Bowling votes yes. So Christine, thank you. Congratulations.
Oh,
and,
thank you very much to all of you.
Best of luck with your endeavor.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Like the first time in a while, I wish there'd been, more questions about parking or something. Because now we do have to move to the town administrator's report. Because our next item is not ready until 6:55. So Greg, you want to start up?
Sure, thank you, Eli. We have been working on a timeline for a discussion, more public discussion on dispatch options, and presented to you in summary form what that might look like over the course of the next couple, 3 months. Starting with your next meeting, May 17th, where you would identify any additional information that you would like, and do a quick review of the information to date that we do have. And with that, we would create a more in-depth webpage on the town site and provide the information about our current operations and what the future would look like, either if we keep it in-house or if we do decide to go to the regional center in Middleton. And so we can outline those two options in a fair amount of detail. And then we would target a public forum on the question of dispatch operations. Suggested that we could do that on June 7th, which is part of your regular meeting, the first one in June. And then a second public forum we could hold after town meeting. Town meeting is the 21st of June. We could hold a second public meeting as part of your first July meeting, and that is July 6th. After those public forums, after garnering additional public input, we could then have a session where you and the finance committee could sit down, review all the information that we've collected up until that point, and decide how you would like to proceed from there. So that's a draft, obviously subject to your thoughts and any fine tuning, but that would be a way forward on the dispatch question.
Greg, could I ask you a question about this?
Yes, please go ahead, Jeff.
The question I have is, how does the article that's been put forth by petition at the town meeting impact this process?
So I think that's another data point in terms of public sentiment. The town meeting vote is an advisory vote. It is not a binding vote, but obviously you will want to be very interested in it and take note of comments and the debate that might take place at town meeting.
Will the board be putting forth their own comments at town meeting regarding that petition article?
So we're going to actually discuss that in agenda item 6.
Thank you.
We talk about the warrant.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
So if any of the board members want to involved in setting up that basic outline for our meeting on the 17th? Raise a hand. We'll pick somebody. And all right, so it's going to be Ann Harrison and Jeff. So Ann and Jeff can work with Greg.
Question, Eli.
Yes, Jeff.
Is there an opportunity for perhaps a site visit at Middleton sometime during this process?
No, I'm sure there could be. I'm sure that could be arranged. It was last time anyway. I couldn't imagine why they would have changed it.
Yeah.
We can inquire.
Yeah, I'm sure they would welcome that.
Okay.
All right, Greg, keep on going.
All right, an update on Cornerstone Church. You'll recall that we do have an option to purchase the current church located here closer into town as they pursue a new church up further up on School Street at the just at the interchange with 128. In talking to some folks at Cornerstone, they are interested in possibly pursuing an alternative arrangement whereby we would develop that new property in a joint fashion, both the church building a new building, and also the town then constructing a new senior center on the same site. So I think it's worthy of further exploration, and assuming you would agree, then we can continue to have some conversations with the church to see if it has if it's an idea that can materialize.
We're not going to be voting for sure, but a consensus or opinion of the board would be reasonable here. What do people, any comments?
Yeah, I don't need a final decision. I'm just looking this, if it's worth pursuing, I guess is really what I'm looking for.
Yeah, Greg, I'm in favor of that. I think that's we've got a couple of balls in the air here, and I'm just not sure how any of them will pan out, but it's worth, I think, going to the next level.
Ann?
I was just going to say that this eliminates the concerns I've had about reusing the Cornerstone Church, the parking, the need to make it a two-story building accessible. It just seems like probably a better direction. So yes, absolutely, by all means, pursue it, as far as I'm concerned.
Becky?
I think it's a really good idea to investigate this. And yes.
Jeff?
I think it's really important that that if we moved in that direction, that it was really, I have a concern about how we make it clear that this is not a program of Cornerstone Church, but it's a town program. Other than that, I think it's a great thing to investigate. I also like to know if we get any update on the assessment of the other property that we were looking at for the senior center.
Yeah, unfortunately that's been delayed, but we do have that back on track and expect to have that completed in June.
Okay. So I would be supportive of certainly pursuing the idea of doing this kind of joint venture on the property with Cornerstone, as long as we can work out the details of our having separate agreements about the property.
I think it's reasonable to pursue looking into this option as well.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
So Greg, you're at item 3 on your report, but we are far enough in that we could return to the regular agenda. How about we do that and then come back to your report?
Yeah.
Afterwards?
Perfectly fine.
All right, we'll go back up to the item number 3 on the agenda, which is COVID update and the beach season. So, as of last week, the governor announced a bunch of loosening of restrictions, and we've seen the press release from the governor's office summarizing the upcoming changes. Masks are going to be required, and not going to be required outdoors when distancing is possible. And then May 10th, larger venues are going to open. Water parks and water and theme parks are going to be opening up at 50%. Currently, the objective, the plan from the state, the hope is to open up fully by August 1st, depending on the metrics that they get from COVID testing. So, in the face of this and other changes, bars and restaurants are going to start to be able to serve alcohol without a food order. There's thinking that we should make a decision about where we stand on the beach opening policy. And Parks and Rec is gearing up for pretty normal summer. And there may be protocols for the bathhouse and asking beachgoers to spread out, but the recommendation right now is that we open up to residents and visitors, assuming no new outbreaks. We are starting to hear inquiries, so that's why we pushed this up to this meeting to have some debate and make a decision. So, board members, what's your opinions?
Eli, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Becky.
I think it would be nice to open the beach back up and get some more traffic for the businesses in town, providing we're on top of just any outbreaks and address that as if we have any.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, with the obvious caveat that if things change, we change our position. But the way it's going here, I don't see any reason to plan to restrict the beach this year.
John Round.
Yes, Eli, I also am in favor of returning to kind of what I guess is kind of normal operations. I mean, certainly subject to the guidelines that the state has put out, in particular, I guess, with regard to the bathhouse. But otherwise, it's pretty much getting back to the way life was 2 years ago. And I'm all in favor of pushing in that direction as long as we stay steady on the course here.
Jeff.
I'm wondering if there's a definition of what a new outbreak is.
Oh, there you go.
Because that sounds good. The language sounds good, but we ran into a lot of back pressure on the restrictions that we put on the beach this past summer, and I'd like it to be out front what we would be when we would become concerned that there was outbreaks related to beach use. It's a very hard thing to get my head wrapped around. I'm sure it's hard for the community to do as well. But are we talking about looking at a rolling average of cases within the town? And what would the standard be?
I hate to say it, but I don't think we really are in a very good position to put in place a very specific standard. I think if we saw a dramatic shift in the number of cases in town, or if we started seeing, for example, a number of different businesses suddenly go down to closures due to COVID exposures or COVID infections within their staff. Those are the sorts of things that might cause us to rethink it. But I think laying out a specific set of criteria right now is going to be very difficult to do in a way that wouldn't of its own right cause people to come back and ask us why we did that. Other board members?
Eli, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I have, I agree, Eli. It's very hard to, excuse the language, draw a line in the sand here. But because it's hard to predict. And you know that a year ago or 9 months or so ago, there were various numbers that they put out and said, well, this is going to be a cutoff, and then things kind of shifted around. And I agree, we don't have enough information to know that. But I think everybody has been through so much in the past year that they understand if we make decisions to change things because there are issues, they'll know that that's just part of life right now. It is. So I think saying it's open until until there are reasons that it shouldn't be open, I think that's the way we have to go.
I think I would have to qualify it by saying it'd have to be pretty significant evidence for me at this point. Last year, when March rolled around, we were extremely conservative, but I would need some relatively significant evidence to go back and revisit it at this point.
Eli?
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, I'll get to you in a second, Becky.
Yep, no worries.
I also have a question about whether we know what the communities around us are doing about their beaches, Gloucester in particular, Ipswich. Because if they're going to restrict to residents only, we could have a flood of people coming into Singing Beach. Which, in terms of our lost revenue last year, it might sound good, but it could also lead to other problems that we don't want to entertain. So do we know anything about what's going on with the Gloucester beaches or Ipswich?
As far as I understand, that they're all planning to be open to the general public.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's what I have. Becky?
I just felt that, or thought that we, if we keep an eye on what's happening in terms of the state, that's one way of watching. But primarily, if things happen, I think that the governor's office will let us all know.
All right. Any comments from the public before we make a decision on this tonight? Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. First of all, I just wanted to thank you all for all the work that you've been putting into everything going on, COVID, SLV, everything. So just wanted to say that. But regarding the beach stickers, I was just wondering, at the beginning of last year, when we had the first really big warm days, there was a flood of people coming in, especially out of towners. And I was just thinking, maybe there can be a plan to stagger and bring up the amount over the period of time. I know that's not necessarily, beach season, beginning in May, but even before that, just to plan. And then just see how that rolls, but to stagger it up and make sure that all the processes are in place. But that's just one recommendation to think about. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandy.
But Eli,
Go ahead, Ann.
I don't know how well enforced it is, but the signs at the beach currently say that it's residents only, which is a way of staggering it. Keep it registered residents only, and check from time to time, check particularly on nice warm days, and then on Memorial Day when open it up.
How do board members feel about that proposal? Actually, we have Chief Fitzgerald here. Chief Fitzgerald, do you have any opinion on that proposal?
What was the proposal once again, there, Eli? I know we've staffed the beach on the nice warm days and the weekends since probably the beginning of March. So,
yeah.
And then during the week, if it's busy, the patrols do go in and out, and obviously, as time permits, to monitor the lot. But on the busy days, we have been staffing it, all ready.
I think that the proposal was, well, Ann, I'll let you state it specifically.
What I think I said was that currently the signage at the beach says residents only. And that we would monitor the parking lot and keep it residents only until the full opening at Memorial Day, when there are a limited number of residents, of non-resident parking spaces available on weekdays. So that is a staggered opening, which is what Sandy was asking for. I wouldn't do anything about people who are willing to walk from downtown, non-residents, other than monitor the parking spaces for 2 hours.
Well, so that is what we do in terms of the parking.
Yeah.
I mean, right, if it gets up to 75, 80 degrees next weekend, we don't have any staff checking people going onto the beach.
Mhm.
So that would be available to walk-ons without any charging or whatever. The parking lot, though, still is resident only on the weekends.
I'm sorry, all I was trying to say is I thought that what we currently have and what we're currently enforcing is in fact a staggered start.
Yes, I would agree with that, Ann.
So the proposal there is to simply leave the parking residents only until Memorial Day.
Yeah. Eli, if I might ask the chief, I'm just curious. There've been some warm days here, and I've been down there, and I know that you've had one of your officers there when I've gone in on 1 or 2 occasions. Are they down there at all during the weekdays? And I'm just curious how many non-residents might be showing up, because in those instances, they certainly would be enforcing the rules if all the non-resident spots are taken.
Yeah, I mean, we go in there. We don't, specifically staff it during the week, because we find it's more busy during the, during the weekends. But on occasion, the patrols will go in there and, enforce as needed, but I haven't seen it to be an issue during the week. It's more on the weekends when it's warm.
Well, it can be warm on Wednesday too, but I don't know. There aren't that many days between here and Memorial Day. We're moving along. But, okay, I was just
I mean,
curious.
obviously, if we see a stretch of really warm weather, we'll reevaluate it. And if we need to staff it, then that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Sarah Malish, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. From a financial perspective, it would seem to make sense that we would go back to what we were doing in 2019 to obtain the revenue from non-residents. I believe the biggest revenue we obtain is from walk-ons coming up on the commuter rail. And it's about, I think it was a couple $100,000. Greg probably has better numbers than I do that we didn't have last year in our revenue.
Yeah, and that's based on a regular reopening, which is around Memorial Day. All right, so I think the proposal right now is to support residents only parking until Memorial Day, and then to support the proposal or to support Parks and Rec for gearing up for a normal summer with potential for protocols in the bathhouse and for distancing and for potential distancing on the beach. But other than that, there'll be no restrictions to residents and visitors on the beach. It'll be a normal season.
May I ask for a clarification, Eli?
Yep.
Are we talking about 7 days a week or just the weekends that the parking at the beach is limited to residents only until Memorial Day?
The proposal that Ann said, I think it was 7 days a week, or did you intend otherwise, Ann?
Yes, 7 days a week. With the signs, that's what the sign says, 7 days a week.
Yeah. Any other comments? I got a motion for what was just proposed.
So moved.
I got a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right. Let's move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is.
Eli, I'm sorry, Eli.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, just a couple of quick other items that related to COVID. One is that we do plan to allow the general public to enter town hall starting next week. We've been under appointment only. We'll have people come in through the front door. There'll be a greeter there to ascertain where they would like to go and making sure that we're not bunching up too much at any one area. But we hope to be able to allow people to come in rather than make appointments ahead of time, starting next week. Second item is we heard from Conley's drugstore today. It's short notice, but it's an opportunity for folks if they're interested. They're setting up a small clinic at the Sacred Heart Church this Wednesday evening, late afternoon, 4 to 6:30, and open to anyone 16 or over to get the first COVID shot, and they'll be back in 3 weeks with the second shot. This is the Pfizer vaccine, and people can go to Conley's and register, or there's a link from our website to do so. So that's something that just materialized, and we it's really his clinic, but we're helping to promote it and facilitate a bit. And thank Nancy Hammond and the COA for facilitating some of the logistics of it.
Great.
Okay, that it on the COVID list?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on to parking. So we're talking about the 15-minute parking space at Beach and Summer. Greg, can you summarize this one?
Sure. So this is a parking space at the corner of Beach and Summer, next to Richdale's, across the street from Callis. And so we have this as a 15-minute parking space. There's a couple right in front of the post office at 15 minutes, and one or two other ones in town. And, you know, it was been in place for a number of years. The goal was to have at least a few spots where there's a higher turnover, quicker turnover, so that people can, you know, if they have just a quick run into whatever, one of the shops or something, there'd be a better opportunity for a parking space. With the outdoor dining taking away some of the parking, some of the merchants requested that perhaps this 1 15-minute space be removed and it just be a standard 2-hour parking spot, while we have the outdoor dining taking up some of the other parking spaces.
So, questions and comments from the board. Jeff, you want to go first?
I think this is a really good idea. It's not a lot of restitution in terms of the availability of parking, but it does provide more parking for people in the immediate village area. I don't think we should touch the spaces by the post office, because those do circulate really quickly and people do go in and out of the post office pretty quickly that are using them. And I think, Greg, the other one was over by the laundry.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And in that area there, I don't think we should touch that either. But I'd like to see this in line with the other parking in the downtown.
Other board members? Ann?
Seems good to me.
John Round?
I'm good, but I am curious why those, I understand the slots in front of the post office, but why the other two were 15 minutes? Was the one across from Callis, was that because that was thought it might also be a post office deal, or? I just don't know what the thinking was for that, but I'm certainly in favor of making that spot, conform with the other parking, parking requirements elsewhere on that street.
So I don't have the memory of why that one was converted over to 15 minutes. I do remember the discussion around the one by the dry cleaners. There was some specific need there to allow some quick ins and outs, especially during beach season. And but the one over by Callis, that one I'm not sure about. Greg?
Yeah, it predates me, so I don't know that history either. I was a part of Richdale's, but Richdale's has its own parking. It's maybe it was for the post office going the other way. I couldn't tell you for sure. I don't know if Todd remembers that, going back to that history or not.
Chief
Sorry,
Michelle?
Eli. From what I remember, that was a 2-hour spot years ago. And then when the downtown improvement happened with the sidewalks, for some reason it was changed to 15 minutes. and I don't recall why.
All right.
May I make a suggestion?
Yep.
That we change it through October. And in the meantime, get a handle on why that space was put in there. And maybe extend it when the time comes. Because this was requested as a temporary change.
Yeah. All right.
I think Jeff's comment is a good one. I mean, we're just sitting here speculating. And once you change that to 2 hours, there may be some people that'll raise their hand and say, what are you doing? There was a reason that was 15 minutes, and well, we'll give them 5 months to comment and then evaluate that. But
So let's do it as, let's just take it as a motion then. Okay, Jeff, will you make a motion to convert the 15-minute space at Beach and Summer to a 2-hour space through October?
Through October 31st. That was very well made, Eli. I would go with your motion.
Okay. All right. What the heck? I'll make that motion. Can I
So
get a
moved.
All right. Can I get a second?
second,
All right. So let's say discussion. We've already heard comments from some board members. Ann, what are your thoughts?
It's fine.
Becky,
I'm fine with that.
any comments from the public? All right, roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
yes.
Bodmer Turner,
Yes,
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right.
Could I ask a point of clarification?
Yes,
We're going from 15 minutes to,
can you identify
many?
yourself?
that's
oh,
Gail.
Gail
That's
Hunter.
Gail.
Take a minute.
Identified myself.
So, sorry, Gail, I didn't see the 207.
15 minutes to how many?
2 hours.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we voted on that. Any other parking items that any board members want to discuss? Jeff, did you have anything?
Nope. No.
All right, 7:25 on the nose. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is a 40B update. What do you know? All right, so SLV said that they were going to file with Mass Housing, and they have. So this is a conventional 40B housing project that's been filed with Mass Housing. Application materials are now on the town's website. We received a letter from Mass Housing, which was their official notification that they'd received the application from SLV. The process is that they start out with a 30-day comment filing period with Mass Housing, and then Mass Housing will be processing that application, and at the end of that, if Mass Housing deems fit, which they typically do, they will give SLV a project eligibility letter, and SLV will take that and come before the ZBA with a comprehensive permit application. Now, we got a request, the Board of Selectmen got a request fairly rapidly after Mass Housing gave us the 30-day comment period notification, asking for an extension to that comment period to allow some additional work to happen on some environmental studies. And also we felt that there was a little bit, we wanted a little bit more time, given the fact that we were heading into town meetings still and still dealing with COVID. So we put in a request to Mass Housing for a 60-day extension. They gave us a 30-day extension, and that runs through June 24th. So various boards have been notified of the new application. They're going to be generating comments to us. We've received some comments from, for example, Coastal Streams sent us some comments today. We will be collecting those comments. And then the Board of Selectmen will write their summarized set of comments to Mass Housing regarding the 40B application, the one that's before Mass Housing. And we will include in it the collection of various comments from the different boards or some subset of them. So we need to start thinking about the comments that we want to put in that letter. And we need to finalize that letter before June 24th. Now we have meetings on the 17th and on June 7th. Some of those meetings are going to be kind of busy. Maybe we may want to add an extra meeting just to deal with the comment letter at some point before annual town meeting. But that's the basic, that's what we have to deal with for the next month or so. So questions or comments from the board?
Eli,
Go ahead, Becky.
there was a citizens planner training collaborative that was put up. It was a video presentation. That's on the 40B website. I mean, on the town's website, the 40B link. And I was wondering, I did not get a chance to see that. Did anybody see that? I'm wondering if there's a way we might have access to that again.
Yeah, we can reestablish that link. You say it's not there anymore, Becky? I thought it was.
Well, it said it was only available until the 30th of April.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if we can get that extended, I'd like to see it. I'd like to be able to see it. But as far as we might want, I think it might be good simply to have a meeting around SLB, 40B comments.
Becky, it's Marlene. I just checked that link. It still works.
Thank you, Marlene.
All right, we'll come down to the scheduling of the meeting in a little bit. Other board members, Sarah Melish, I see your hand. I'll get to you in a minute. All right, no other comments from board members right now. Sarah Melish, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to react to Becky's comment regarding that, that media presentation. We did have 4 members of the Zoning Board of Appeals attend that meeting. And it's my understanding that the person who presented that meeting might be one of the options for our technical consultant. And I personally thought the meeting was very well run. So if people can look at that, if it's extended, that I think that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we probably will be discussing this. Well, I'm quite certain that we will be discussing this at some point between now and the meeting that we set up to go through our actual comments, because we'll need to generate some drafts before then. But with respect to scheduling a meeting to discuss that, just focused on just finalizing the draft comments. Do you want to aim for Thursday, June 17th?
That works for me.
It seems pretty tight,
Too close to the deadline?
I think.
Well, but we may be getting comments back in kind of at the very back end of the time frame, right?
Well,
I mean, anybody who wants to make comments knows that we've got 60 days.
We
the
had
ordinance
60.
we have 30
Yeah,
days
we had, yeah, and
extension.
human nature is such that,
Yeah, human nature is almost, we're gonna make this very public. We have made this very public. We
Mhm.
Mhm.
30-day notification came in. So I'm not gonna have an awful lot of sympathy at this stage in the game for people coming in late with comments on the 60-day period.
do you have any input on these studies of the vernal pools, where that data, those data are going to stand, given this window?
When they're gonna come in, Greg?
I don't have a specific, but I think it'll be within this time frame, at least the main data. There may not be a final report, but certainly the bulk of the data collection will have been completed and the highlights from that can be known.
Okay. So long as the people involved know that, I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
Yeah. They requested the extension. I told them.
I know.
Okay, the 17th is okay with you, Jeff? No, you thought it was tight.
I think it's a little tight.
We're gonna be discussing it before the 24th. I mean, before then as well. But so town meeting is on the 21st. The very worst, we could have another discussion on the 22nd or the 23rd if we found we weren't able to finish up on the 17th. God help us. I don't know.
Everybody else is okay with it, then
But you feel more comfortable with the 10th, Jeff? I'm not sure how the process is going to work here, Eli. In other words, 17th, what's all the information? Let's put together a draft, or are we going to have some sort of a draft that we'll have to assemble before that date?
There's a draft that we're going to assemble before that. We'll use staff as much as possible to put
Yes.
together existing known commentary. I'll work with Jeff to put together a skeleton, with Greg to put together a skeleton. So I fully expect there to be a pretty hefty draft before we get to that date. We're not going to be sitting down in that meeting and writing down the first draft.
If that process can move along and maybe, a first pass on a first round of comments before that 17th date, then I think we're good.
Absolutely.
Should we possibly do for the, shoot for the 10th, and if we need another night, we do the 17th? Does that make sense, or no? Or 17th and then the 22nd, as you suggested, Eli?
I prefer the 17th. I mean, we asked for an extension, a 60-day extension of time. I'd rather, and there's a fair amount of stuff happening in between here and there. So I would prefer the 17th.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
but what Becky's proposing is the 17th is the backup for the 10th.
Or the 22nd is the backup for the 17th if we needed more time. I mean, another meeting.
I can go with the latter. I can go with what Becky just said about the 17th and the 22nd.
All right.
As long as we have these iterations of a draft prior to that, I think it fits together.
Ann?
Yeah, that's okay, assuming that we're not passing drafts around outside of meeting times and, generally getting ourselves in a mess.
Right. So what I would imagine, what I'll do is I'll stick a short 40B update onto the next couple of agendas, and drafts will fall in there.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, so that's what we'll do. We'll do the 17th at 6:30 and potentially the 22nd. And Alan, I know what you're going to say. That's the rain date for town meeting. You're muted.
Third.
The rain date, I think, is the 23rd, Eli.
Oh, the
Yeah.
23rd. I'm so sorry. You're right. All right. Nope, we're good then. We did it right. All right.
Please
So,
don't act so surprised.
yeah, that was perfectly planned. Yep. Okay. All right. So I think that's all we really need to cover tonight on the 40B. Greg, did you have anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I think that was it. Thank you.
All right. So, well, we're doing pretty good. We're at agenda item number 6, which is the final approval of the FY22 budget and the warrant. So what I was going to do was go through the FY22 budget for the final approval and then move to the warrant articles to make recommendations. Alan, the approval of the final budget, the way I anticipate doing this is going through the major departments and get the yes or no from the Board of Selectmen for approval of those items. So I don't think this stage will take very long. Greg, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
No problem. I'm here for the duration.
All right. Greg, did you have any comments you wanted to make before we started ripping into that?
Was that to me, Eli? I'm sorry.
Yes, I said, did
Yeah.
you have comments you wanted to make on the budget approval before we started ripping into the departments for approval for department by department?
Just to say that it's been a good process. Started back in the fall with department heads putting together their requests. The Finance Committee has gone through with a very fine tooth comb and have reviewed all of the requests and scrutinized and done some fine tuning. I think it's been a good process. My hat's off to Sarah and the rest of the Finance Committee members for all of their time and energy that they put into it. Bottom line is that we would anticipate a tax hike request of 1.5% to fund this proposed budget. The overall expenses are up about 3.5%, a little less. But over half of that, or not quite half of that, I should say, is due to increased spending in the community preservation accounts, the projects for that funding. So that's a separate source of funding. And the other portion was bringing capital back up to where we'd like to see it. We did decrease it for this current year as we decided to respond to COVID and have a 0% tax increase for the current fiscal year. Excuse me. We're able to cover the extra expenses by being less conservative in our local receipt estimations. And also we did have some offsetting decreases in our debt service in particular. And also we're able to take advantage of some savings in our health insurance, as we've had some good years in a row here with zero or an actual decrease last year. So that has helped us in our budgeting. So overall, as I say, without those increases of capital and community preservation, it's more of a 1.9% increase. But operating expenses are up 2.2 on the town side. On the school side, it's a 3.2 increase to our appropriation to the district. Overall, their funding is up just over 4%. And they're able to have additional funding from the state, as that has increased a bit through the new formulas. And given the Essex enrollment growing faster relative to Manchester's, they have a higher increase. Overall, the town fundings combined is up 3.5%. So those are the highlights. Pretty much standard operating status quo for most operations. We do have a slight increase in the DPW under water and sewer, where we're funding the second half of a temporary staffing increase as we anticipate a couple of retirements of some senior staff members, and allowing for a transition period where we can capture some of their extensive knowledge before they do retire. We wanted to have some overlap. So that was the reason for that increase. There are a few changes in staffing, but they are cost neutral. Just doing some rearranging and reallocating and taking advantage of some higher efficiencies in a couple of departments so that we can do that. So overall, like I say, a pretty tight budget again. Applaud the department heads and their austerity and working with the constraints that we asked them to, but still providing, I think, the services that people want us to provide and expect us to.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the main categories, starting with general government. And what I'll do is I'm simply going to make motions to approve and see if we get seconds on each of these. So I will make a motion. No, I'll take it back. I'll do it the regular way. I'm going to ask for motions. Can I get a motion to approve general government in the amount of $4,727,109?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. I just realized this is going to be irritating because ordinarily I could just do these with voice votes, and this time around will be the very first time I haven't done it with voice votes, and it's going to be kind of a pain, but that's the way it goes. Public safety. Can I get a motion to approve the public safety department in the amount of $3,629,507?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. And I'm going to motion to approve public works in the amount of $2,189,914.
So moved.
Got a
Second.
second? Any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. I get a motion to approve other environmental in the amount of $666,155.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Get a motion to approve human services in the amount of $358,757.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Second.
Got any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Now, library. Mr. Bodmer Turner, I'm going to recuse myself from the library vote because my wife is a part-time employee at the library. Would you please take this vote?
Sure. Can we get a motion for the library The figure I have is 511,258.
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Baldwin,
I recuse myself from this vote.
thank you. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes.
Recreation, can I get a motion for approval of the recreation budget in the amount of $367,422, $367,422.
So moved.
Second,
second,
any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes,
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Can I get a motion to approve debt service in the amount of $1,119,928?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Bob Turner,
yes,
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Bowling votes yes. Enterprise funds in the amount of, can I get a motion to approve enterprise funds in the amount of $1,714,046, $45? No? Yes, five.
Yes.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
yes,
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. That's the total for Article 14. I think that is it. So we also have to approve the warrant tonight. And there's the warrant articles and then there's the warrant. Correct, Greg?
So we need to walk through the warrant articles. Have you approve them and also decide who will take each one for a brief explanation if as necessary in your position on them.
So,
Eli,
yes, Becky.
before we do that, before those, it says the town of Manchester by the Sea annual town election warrant.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I should recuse myself from that because I am actually running.
No, you don't actually have to. This is just an approval for the form of the warrant to certify that it contains what it should.
All right, then I'm in.
So this is a warrant for the annual town election. This includes one member for the Manchester Housing Authority for 4 years, one member for the Manchester Housing Authority for 5 years, one member of the Manchester Library Board of Trustees for 2 years, Manchester Library Board of Trustees for 3 years, one moderator for 1 year, 2 members of the Planning Board for 3 years, one member of the School Committee for 3 years, and one member of the Board of Selectmen for 3 years. So can I get a motion to approve the annual town election warrant as I have stated it?
So moved.
Second,
second,
any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
yes,
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right. So now we're into the actual town meeting warrant, and there's a few things that we need to discuss here. And Alan, I'm going to need you to speak up very shortly. But one thing I think I wanted to cover first is the proposal from the fire department for inclusion of or adoption of some additional sections of the state law with regard to sprinklering. And we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. And we said that we would discuss it again this time round. The current warrant does not include those provisions. We've received a little bit of input from the public, suggesting some clarification or some general concerns. But Alan, I guess, Alan, I'll let you speak right now with regard to that article.
Well, I don't have any opinion on the merits of it, but I do think it is likely to engender a considerable amount of discussion. People will be significantly affected by it, property owners, and therefore, in the interest of keeping this meeting short, which I think we all agree is a good idea, I would prefer to defer it.
So, board members, before we dive into the rest of the article, I would like to address these concerns and see whether or not there's still an appetite for us including it in the annual town meeting or pushing it to the fall. So let's go around robin. Ann Harrison.
I think it could be controversial, and I would like to see it postponed.
Mr. Round.
I'm taking Alan's advice. I agree. We could delay it to the next meeting, I think, or just delay it and see when it would be appropriate time.
Mr. Bob-Return.
I would agree with the other board members who have spoken so far.
Ms. Jakes.
I agree, but I'm concerned that we're going to have a very long meeting in the fall as well. And I am not convinced that putting off the sprinkler should be done at this point.
Okay. Well, I concur with the others, but what I would say is that when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, what we had said, and Chief, I'm talking now partly to you too. What we had said that was we recognized that there would be potential for a lot of questions being asked. So what I would say is that we should not defer public outreach on this too terribly long if we think we are going to put it on a fall town meeting, and instead continue to develop that list, that frequently asked questions list regarding it, and take the time to vet it with a little bit less pressure in between now and fall town meeting, so that we're not pushing so hard. And hopefully if we do that, then we'll have everybody's questions answered, and it won't be a long controversial discussion at fall town meeting. That sound okay?
Did you get my bulleted list that I
Yes.
forwarded? Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
Okay. So Chief, sorry we didn't get to it this time around, but we thank you for your effort you put into it so far, and we'll definitely be following up with you.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah Melish, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, so this was not presented as a warrant article to the Finance Committee, so we have not voted on it. And we thought we were done.
Well, it's moot because we're not putting it
Right.
on.
Thank you.
All right, so Alan, why don't we start with you and see how you plan on running the meeting, and then we can go through the warrant.
Well, I plan on running it very much in the same way that we did last year. I have prepared a consent calendar because last year I got a lot of positive feedback about using the consent calendar for articles that were likely to be non-controversial. And so I have, with Ben's help, put, let's see, articles 1, 2, 6, 9, and 10 into a consent calendar, which can be voted on as a single motion at town meeting without debate. Other than that, I think it will be pretty much, very much like last year. I've been reviewing the public health protocol that I developed last year, and I've updated it to reflect the most recent governor's orders, but I don't see any reason to change the protocol that we had last year, meaning that masks will be strongly encouraged, social distancing will be encouraged or required, and all the other protective measures we had in place last year, I plan to follow again.
Okay. And is your intent to do the consent calendar as the first vote of the meeting?
Yes, as soon as we get through the preliminaries.
Yeah. All right. So, so we have Articles 1 through 10 are essentially ours. So I think that we can simply assume that for all of those, we recommend approval. There are a number of citizens petitions, Article 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are citizens petitions articles, and we have to make decisions tonight on whether or not we support them. Article 16 is ours. And Article 17 is this a standard placeholder at the end. So Article 16 will obviously be recommending approval. Well, what we have to do here is for all of these articles, we have to choose who is going to move them and who is going to second them. Oh, Alan, one thing I forgot to ask you was which of these articles you are going to want members of the board to speak to. I'm assuming that none of the ones on the consent calendar.
That is right. I have, because I had to do it in order to prepare the consent calendar and have it ready to be included in the Finance Committee pamphlet, which goes to the printer tomorrow. I had to name movers and seconders for that. So I hope no one will disagree with my choices.
Okay, I will accept your wisdom. Okay. So which of the articles do you expect or want members of the board to speak to?
I actually hadn't gotten that far, but let me take a quick look, and if you can do something else in the meantime, I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes.
I'm happy to do that. So we don't have to do movers and seconds. So when Alan comes up with a list of ones that we have to speak to, we will select which of the board members is going to speak to each of those articles. In the meantime, are there any comments on the standard articles 1 through 10 from board members, corrections, typos, take your pick. Speak up in no particular order. All right. If anybody finds something, we can come back to it. We are going to come now to Article 11, the citizen petition article. And this is a non-binding vote. And I'm going to read these in full because these I don't think have been read in full in a public meeting before. So Article 11, Section A, to see if the town will vote to express its opposition to the proposal of by Strategic Land Ventures to erect a large multifamily complex on the parcel located and recorded as number 43018, which is adjacent to School Street and Route 128 and abuts land dedicated to conservation purposes, which in aggregate approximate 1,600 acres in Manchester and Essex, and which is located within the major watershed supplying Manchester's drinking water. Given the proposal's threats to life, health, and safety of residents throughout the town and of wildlife on or near the parcel, and B, to express support of the goal of producing more affordable housing units in Manchester as noted in the Manchester Housing Production Plan, and to commend and endorse the work of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust, the Manchester Housing Authority, and their allied organizations in their efforts to do so, including through expansion and renovation of housing units at Newport Park and the Plains, and through the pursuit of means other than by the proposal by SLV to erect a large multifamily complex on the parcel recorded as number 43018, i.e. that are more consistent with the scale of existing commercial properties in the town, more pedestrian friendly in their locations and design, and not a significant threat to life, health, and the safety of town residents or of wildlife. So I'm going to make a comment on this before I take comments from the board. And the observation is that at the time we go to town meeting vote, the Board of Selectmen will still be within the comment period to Mass Housing for submittal of our letter to Mass Housing on this project. And I will further observe that we just finished not successfully attempting to negotiate a LIP with SLV. So it's my thinking that given those circumstances that we should take no position on Article 11, in particular since it is a non-binding vote. So other board members?
I agree.
Ann Harrison?
I agree.
John Round?
It's an important observation you make there, Eli. Yes, we're in that window. I agree.
Jeff?
I agree with your comment. I'm also concerned that this article is a single article, deals with two separate issues. And one is, opposition to the proposal of SLV, and two is support for the Manchester Housing Authority. I don't know what the legal issues are around doing this, because typically this would be two articles.
Alan?
Well, I think if
I don't think we can break it because that's how it was submitted, but.
well, I think you can break it in terms of expressing your opinion. I think you could take no position on A and take a position on B.
But in the end, there's one vote.
Well, that's true.
Oh. Yeah.
Now, I haven't thought about this at all, but just thinking off the top of my head, as we always do with Article 4, I can divide the question and take separate votes on the two pieces.
I would appreciate that, Alan. I think that gives people an opportunity to speak to one and not the other. I mean, to vote for one and not the other.
Yeah, I think we would have one discussion of the whole article, but let me think about it a little more carefully, but I don't see any reason we can't do that.
Okay, thank you.
And as far as the article is concerned, I still recommend that we take no position on either of them.
And that I won't engage on that question. That's up to the board.
Yeah. And furthermore, I'm not sure that we need to speak to this article, but I'll leave that open to board members as well. I mean, we could make a relatively general statement. Maybe that would be appropriate. General statement regarding affordable housing. Alan, do you have any preferences or how the board addresses this?
No, I don't. I will give you though a firm answer within the next day on whether we can divide the question.
All right. So do board members feel like we don't have to actually decide on this tonight? I'll tell you what, all we have to do is decide on tonight is whether or not we're taking a position. And right now that we're not taking a position on either of them. Whether or not we want to make some statement regarding this article or related to this article, that I think we'll just let board members stew on that, and we'll decide at one of our next meetings.
Eli, if I could make one comment about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
That I think we need to, at a minimum, explain why we're not taking a position.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I think that's right.
Because otherwise the town citizens are going to feel like the board doesn't care about this article.
Yep.
I agree with that, Jeff.
All right. Okay, Article 12, also a citizen petition article. To see if the town will vote to amend Article 12 or earth removal, Section 4, general limitations of the general bylaws to insert the following. P, in consideration of the safe and healthy of town residents, no permit for the use of dynamite or other explosives blasting shall be approved for the purpose of constructing, 1, any commercial, i.e. non-residential structure containing more than 100,000 square feet, or 2, any individual structure in the town meeting containing more than 20 housing units, unless A, the board,
Board.
is satisfied that in its specific circumstances, such blasting will conform to the guidelines promulgated by the board for the safe and effective use of blasting for large projects, and will be monitored by the fire department for compliance with all applicable safety codes. And B, the board manifests such satisfaction by the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of its then current members. So I'll make the immediate observation that it can't remain the board. It's going to have to be, probably what was intended was the planning board. I think the rest of
I think that may be in the existing bylaw that's being amended.
Yeah, I thought I looked at that and it said planning board all over the place in there, but I could be wrong. In any case, if it is consistent with the existing law, fine. If it isn't, probably that amendment's going to have to be made. Now, I've always, thought that the earth removal law here was weird in the general bylaws. Seems like it's more zoning bylaw. But in any case, it is my thinking that the vast bulk of this law has planning board speaking to it and adjudicating it in nearly every respect. So I was thinking that we should be taking the advice of the planning board on this one. What other board members thinking about this one?
I was thinking the same thing, Eli.
Does Eli, do our laws have certain specifications with regard to blasting, or is it really just that it's the planning board's purview? I mean, I haven't looked at that part of the regs here, and I'm just curious if there are specifications, how do they stack up relative to the states? I don't know.
Don't believe there are specifications.
It's just that the planning board will pass judgment on it one way or the other.
Right. Ron Mastercomo, has the planning board discussed this citizen petition yet? I think I may have caught him unawares. All right, we'll see if he comes back.
Yeah, Eli, it's Ron. I wasn't aware that this was an article or a warrant article, so we'll have to review it if it's going into our court.
Yeah.
So we'll take it up if if you're tossing it to us.
Technically, you only have to take positions or vote on zoning board changes, zoning law changes, as far as I understand it. But this one really is in your wheelhouse, but is in the general bylaws.
Yeah. So we'll review it.
Chief Cleary, you had a comment?
Yeah, I believe I had sent my comments to this originally to Greg. There are current blasting permits that are obtained through the fire department. We have our safety checkoff lists and we follow the state regulations. My only concern is that whatever is done here is done with professional and expert advice as to anything to do with blasting, and not just somebody's idea that anything that should be anything that's going to be changed based on the state blasting regulations or what we already follow. I don't want to be put in a position to have to enforce things that I can't enforce. So without some blasting engineers or some pyrotechnicians or somebody behind there signing off on engineering stamps, I would be very leery of a citizen petition to change something of this magnitude.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
I'm assuming you heard that commentary.
Eli?
Go ahead, Becky.
I just also had some concerns with the wording. I mean, some of the wording and what it means or doesn't mean. When they talk about 100,000 square feet, how is it that comes into, I guess what I'm getting at is, are we talking about spread out, horizontal, vertical? Does it matter? I mean, sorry, my dog's talking to me. And then anything containing more than 20 housing units. It just seems like this article has chosen a couple of numbers, but it's not actually referring to how much space is going to be blasted. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
I do. And I think your comments actually, I mean, I think they're valid. And I think they cover areas of the bylaw that the Board of Selectmen has nothing to do with.
Right.
Which is why I don't think we should be making a recommendation on this.
Well, we don't have anything to do with it. And it's also just so general. I know, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Did you have a comment?
I have a point of information that I need to get clarified, which is this article, since it involves our general bylaws, something that's reviewable by the town attorney? Because I agree with Becky, the language in it is seemingly arbitrary. And I am concerned about what Chief Cleary just said, that we are within the guidelines of state regulations, or we're out in a place that becomes a lot more difficult to enforce. There's no enforcement in this other than denial of a permit. And if we had to go to court on this, the town would be paying for that. I'm concerned about the general issue here of whether these petition articles that are citizen petition articles are reviewable by a town attorney for scope and language.
I think they're certainly reviewable. I don't know that if we wanted to make any changes to them, they'd have to be proposed as amendments. We can't arbitrarily make them. Is that correct, Alan?
Yes, it is.
But it's reasonable for us to have our town attorney review them. In fact, I think we'd be deficient if we didn't.
I agree with that because they're going to be reviewed by the Attorney General as well if we adopt them.
Greg, you look pained.
No, I was just going to say the same thing that Alan just said, that ultimately this has to be approved by the AG's office. So if they were not deemed, if it was deemed in conflict with other state laws, they will not be approved.
Well, but Eli, these are not binding votes. They're just kind of polls.
This is
This is a
binding.
binding.
Is this binding?
11 is non-binding, but 12 and 13 are.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Since this is a bylaw change, Alan, what's the percentage of the vote?
For general bylaw, it's simple majority.
Okay.
And please don't ask me about zoning changes because that just, the legislature has just thrown that into a complete state of confusion.
Yeah. Well, don't have to worry about that this time around.
Right.
In theory.
Okay.
That's tumbling down the hill towards the fall.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And did you have any comments so far?
I'm getting less and less comfortable. I don't think it's a well thought out bylaw. I'm probably happy accepting the advice of the planning board.
The other option is we can make our recommendation on town meeting floor, and on town meeting floor, make the recommendation to the planning board or take our own position.
I'd like to hear what our lawyer had to say before I decided where I wanted to stand.
Yes.
All right. Then let's make our recommendation on town meeting floor, and then we can select on town meeting floor either to take a position or to recommend their advice to the planning board. Sound all right? All right. Well, that's what we're going to do.
Oops, I was muted. Is this after town council takes a look?
No, we're making our recommendations right now because this is going to print tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
So we're going to make our recommendation on town meeting floor, and then on town meeting floor based on the input that we get from town council. And in the interim, what happens at the planning board, we'll make the recommendation of either the planning board or we'll take our own position.
Thank you.
Everybody okay with that? All right, moving on. Article 13. Also binding, also a citizen petition article. And by the way, for any listeners who are out there listening, the citizen petition articles in the annual town meeting, I should have said this before, require for the annual town meeting a vote, require articles to be, the petition articles to be signed by 10 residents. And then the Board of Selectmen is required to put them on the warrant as they are submitted to us. We can't modify them. We must put them on the warrant and then deal with them as they are written. All right, Article 13. To see if the town will vote to amend Article 10, police and other regulations of the general bylaws by adding a new section 46 as follows. Access to large developments. Construction of any housing project in the town larger than either 1, 100 units or 2, 75,000 square feet is prohibited unless such a project includes 2, or rather it says tow, and that will have to be corrected. Paved access roads open at all times for ingress and egress. 2 access roads are necessary to protect the safety and health of the residents of the project and the town, per petition of citizens. All right, this one's different in a number of respects from Article 12. It's totally in our wheelhouse. because of where it's been placed and how it's been stated. So, board members, comments?
Eli, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Becky.
In general, I am in agreement with this for larger projects. I don't see that we would be doing anything in town on this scale because the ingress and having 2 access roads would make it prohibitive in a lot of areas. But I think it's a good idea to have 2 access roads.
Anne?
I am uneasy with this being a police. It seems to me to be a planning, zoning sort of an issue. So I'm unhappy with where it's being put, particularly in light of the fact that have been working for a couple of years to reorganize things so that land use is in one and zoning is in one place and not scattered throughout all of the bylaws. So I have a meta problem with it. In terms of its, of the specific, it seems, as I agree with Becky, it's probably a good idea to have 2 ways in and out of a large project. I also feel slightly that we are, how to say it, building a barn door after the barn is gone. In terms of this is applicability with our current situation. So.
John Round.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this article, Eli. I think it makes sense. I don't think that if there was any kind of a development, a regular development that would come to Manchester, and I can't just picture where that might be necessarily, that wouldn't be something that would be asked of the applicant by the zoning board anyway. As Ann states, yeah, maybe the horse is out of the barn in a sense that any kind of 40B dealings, this isn't going to apply to them anyway because they're dealing with state regs rather than local regs. So I think this is paying lip service to an issue that, for the very specific issue that this is being addressed, it's probably not applicable, but as a general policy, I think it's a good idea.
Jeff?
I have a concern that this policy or bylaw change would exclude any development at the Powderhouse Hill project. There is not a separate ingress and egress in that property. And I have a concern that while it's well intended, it's very specific to the 40B project. And it's not addressing existing housing, which becomes modified and comes onto the subsidized housing inventory.
So my position on this is I'm sensitive to the idea of supporting public safety here. I think that this is just in the wrong place in an unfixable manner. I think that this is zoning bylaw. It's not enforceable public safety law. I don't think, as well intended as it is, I don't think that we should be throwing globs of stuff into our general bylaws in reaction to a perceived and observed problem without this should have gone through the planning board. It should have been put into the zoning bylaws, in my opinion. I think it's just not right. And I wouldn't support this. If somebody were to come before us without a 40B development or some other development, I would not be supporting this. I'd be telling them to go back to the drawing board and put it before the zoning board and run it through the standard process with the planning board. I just think this is the wrong way to produce bylaws of this sort.
So Eli, this is you're saying no really on a technicality, right? In other words, in spirit, it probably makes sense. It's just the wrong place.
No, I'm not even saying that. I'm not even going to address in spirit. It may make the right sense, but for me, I don't even have to go into the details of this to say no. It's flat out in the wrong place and dealt with by the wrong process. And we can't be making general bylaws that way. It just, if we did this year over year, we would make a mess, and we need to hold the line in that respect. Some years from now, some other board is going to come through the bylaws and look at them. Some new board member who wasn't here when when it happened, they're going to read the bylaws and go, "What in the world is this doing here?" And they'll be right. So I think we should say no on this.
Eli, may I?
Yeah.
I have to agree, and the access roads falls under the purview of the planning board, but I agree 100%, and I change my stand. I think you're completely right that this is not the way this should be done. So that's all. Thank you.
So let me ask the question. If this were worded such that it was amending some other appropriate article associated with zoning.
Can't do it.
No, and this can't be done today for June 21st.
Yeah.
But if it were to come back at a subsequent meeting with the appropriate positioning on the first two lines, but maybe they don't change anything on the main body of the main paragraph, that would make sense. Or
I
could
think it
make sense.
I think it needs to go through the regular, the way the planning board is currently doing recodification. I think Eli's point of how this is being brought up is not the proper process.
I think the same applies to Article 12. I think Chief Cleary's concerns about it, say that these two articles, or this particularly his concerns about Article 12, that it's not vetted in terms of state regulation. And, although we have some articles, some bylaws in Manchester that are stricter than state regulations, they run along the lines of what a state regulation is. And we're moving way beyond that line. That's what I was trying to say before about Article 12.
Yeah, for Article 12, I tend to agree with you. For Article 12, the difference is that there's this large existing strange ward of earth removal in the general bylaws, and this sort of fits into that. So it's a little hard for me to say, no, this doesn't belong here because we've already done this with respect to earth removal.
Well, I guess that my points about that, Eli, without getting too far down in the weeds on this, is 100,000 square feet, or, in terms of Article 13, it's now 75,000 square feet. What's the number? It seems like a dart throw. And I'd like to see these kinds of articles that are changes to our bylaws be vetted, both legally and through the planning board process and the and with the eye on state regulation as well. So I can't be in support of either of these two articles. Even though it's in the right, it's in the general bylaws, which, you know, earth removal doesn't belong there. And if the planning board is going to go about changing that and putting it into the zoning bylaws, I haven't seen that so far.
All right.
Okay, I think we've done quite a bit of, gee, if only we could make this happen some other way.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I think for consistency, I would say we'll make our take a position on town meeting floor, and collect more information and turn it down there.
Well, in this case, I don't agree, because for the other one, there's existing law which it can kind of fit into. For this one, doesn't fit into the existing law, not in any way, shape, or form. That's why I think this one's different.
Okay.
I agree that they're different, Eli. What I'm saying is that I'm concerned about how they've been vetted. And other than let's pick a number and we'll bring this to town meeting floor.
Well,
and maybe I'm way off base on that. But
no, we don't know. It's just that it doesn't make sense entirely for us.
yeah, no, you got a point. So you're arguing for going back to Article 12 and potentially changing our position on that, right?
That would certainly be consistent.
well, I thought that our position, you're saying that we're going to follow the planning board. Is that our position currently?
Our position on Article 12 that we decided was to take no, or it was to make our recommendation on town meeting floor.
Right.
And to make that final decision based on what we got back from comments from town council. And then furthermore, based on what we heard from the planning board, to see whether or not we would take the recommendation.
Right. Okay. And I can still support that, but you heard my concerns. I'm not going to reiterate.
All right.
Article 12 is in the right place in terms of, well, it's not only it's Article 12 in the bylaws, and it's also Article 12 in our warrant. But that's the right place in our bylaws, as opposed to Article 13, which is not in the right place.
So
it's not just a technical issue for me, John.
Yeah, I understand you, Jeff. Yeah.
So in order to move us along, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend a no vote on Article 13. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
So any discussion?
And that no vote is based on the placement of the article or other factors as well?
A combination of other factors, and predominantly the placement of the article. Clearly placing something that should have been in the zoning bylaw, that should have gone through the process by which zoning bylaw is modified, and potentially based on lack of vetting. So individually, those other things might not, in my opinion, kill it, but the fact that it's zoning bylaw placed into the police and other regulations is not appropriate.
Will you speak to that, Eli?
Sure.
I mean, what appears in the warrant is it's just a no vote, but the explanation is an oral one, correct?
Correct.
The warrant will not have anything other than yes, no, or we'll tell you when we get there.
Right. So motion and approve. So roll call vote, Ms. Harrison. Oh, sorry.
One last aspect of discussion. Does it make sense to, this evening and for the purposes of the warrant being published, to say, make our position on town meeting floor?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just, I'm sure you're aware that this will be strongly advocated for by the, by SEMA and others.
Sure. But if we say we'll make our recommendation on town meeting floor when we've had such a very strong set of opinions here in this meeting, I think that's kind of silly. We're supposed to be leading, and we should be leading. If we've come to this conclusion here, we shouldn't be shying away from signaling that in the motions. So, any discussion? Roll
So
call
what's the
vote.
motion that's on the, what is the motion that is on our floor right now?
Motion that is on the floor is that the Board of Selectmen recommend a no vote on Article 13.
Correct. Okay.
Roll call vote, Ms. Harrison.
Support the motion.
Mr. Round.
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner.
Yes.
Ms. Jakes.
Just to be clear, what I'm supporting is your no, saying no to this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Article 14. To see if the town will vote to maintain and fully support police and fire dispatch services here in Manchester and not regionalize these vital services to the North Shore Regional 911 services in Middleton, Mass. This is a non-binding vote. So, I'll say I don't think we should support this. I think that we have a long process that we need to go through. I think this cuts off the business of gathering input from residents, which we are generally tasked to do. I think this looks to try to force a decision based on a subset, an incomplete picture of information that a minority of people may have presented to the public or would like to present to the public, and that it's incumbent on us to, educate the public and then gather a significant amount of feedback on this decision before we make a decision. So I think that we should say no on this one. Board members.
I agree with you.
I agree.
I think we have to have a process for this based on our own charter. There needs to be public hearings on it, and not just have it come to town meeting vote.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, yes, no.
I think that was clear enough that we don't
Yeah.
actually vote. So we're going to make a recommendation to vote no on Article 14. Speaker to be determined. We'll decide speakers at a subsequent meeting. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to pass over proposed zoning bylaw recodifications to 2018 zoning bylaws and at the 2021 Manchester by the Sea annual town meeting. All right, so Alan, I will say that I actually have had an exchange of email late this afternoon with the petitioner on this, spurred by some comments that I made in the meeting last 2 weeks ago. And not going into the details of that email exchange, it is my understanding that the petitioner is considering passing over this particular article, but would like to make a statement to it. And I told the petitioner that they should speak to you with respect to how you would want the logistics of that handled. And that is where the end of my email chain landed. Have you had any contact with the petitioner on this one?
I have not, as recently as you have. Our usual practice is not to allow statements on a motion to pass over. And if I were going to do that, I would I would do it only as an exception to our general practice. And I would have to have, particularly given the fact that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, although looking reasonably hopeful, I want to keep the meeting as short as reasonably possible. So I'll need pretty convincing reasons why I should make an exception.
Okay. I'm not going to advocate for you making an exception to that. It's your meeting. You should run it the way you think you should. I would say that if you did permit some statement regarding it, depending on the nature of that statement, I might feel compelled to ask to, you know what, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just let it slide. But,
Well,
or maybe not.
I'll wait to hear from the petitioner.
All right. So
I think you can probably guess my leaning at this point is to say no.
Yeah. And as far as what the Board of Selectmen recommends, I gather that we would simply recommend to pass over is the correct one here. It's moot. There are no zoning recodification laws here. It's not something that we need to take a position up or down on. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No.
So what it would say on the motions is that the Board of Selectmen recommends passing over.
Mm-hmm.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
How does that impact us taking up these zoning bylaws in the fall town meeting?
Doesn't.
That's right. It does not. The article is specific as to recodification at the annual town meeting.
One meeting cannot bind another. So if it did try to reach into another meeting, it would be invalid.
That's correct.
All right, so we're good on that one. Article 16. So this is the right of way for the Tobacco Road that we discussed. I forget how many weeks ago. Everybody clear on this one?
Mm-hmm.
So by default, we recommend approval. Or does anybody take a position otherwise on this? All right, so we're going to recommend approval. We'll decide speaker on it at a later date. Article 17, we always say we make our recommendation on town meeting floor because we don't know until the end of the meeting if any number is going to be put in there. So that is all the recommendations that we have to make tonight. So, Alan, let's go back to the topic of which articles you wanted people to speak to outside of the.
Yep. I think three, I think there's no reason to speak on the ones that are included in my consent calendar. 3 is the technical high school. I think that's your option. If someone wanted to speak on it or the board wanted to express an opinion about it, certainly that's fine. 4 and 5, the operating budget and capital budget articles, I think someone should speak to. 6, I think that's probably one for Greg if there are questions about it. It's in the consent calendar, so I don't expect any questions. Let's see, 7 is the school article. I think that's your choice. If you wanted to speak in support of it or comment on it, that's up to you. 11, you've discussed. 12 and 13 you discussed. 14 you discussed. I think you would. I think you would want to speak on all of those once you've made your decision as to your recommendations.
Yeah. Yep.
And 16, the Tobacco Woods, I think that's for Greg if there are questions about it. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. 8 is the CPC. We
Oh,
don't
right.
need to-
Sorry. Yeah. I think that's your choice again.
All right.
There's
So
really no need for explanation, but if you want to speak about it, that's certainly fine.
Ellen, is Article 6 part of the consent?
yeah,
6 is part of this.
Okay.
Yeah. And I put it there because Greg has revised the original article to include the specifics of the charges that we're paying from the 2020 fiscal year. I don't expect there'll be any questions, but if someone holds it, then I think we'll take it out of the consent calendar and Greg will answer questions.
Okay.
Hope nobody does that.
so the ones where it was really optional about whether or not we speak are 7, which is a school article, and 8. So before we leave here tonight, I would like to get an opinion from board members about whether or not we think we want to speak on either of those articles.
And also 3, the technical school.
Oh, yeah, North Shore Technical School, we typically try to get
A rep.
yeah, Jeff to speak here.
Yeah.
Was it your anticipation that he would speak there?
I haven't been in touch with him about it. I will ask him whether he wants to. I think we've usually not had someone speak to it unless there are questions.
All right. Board members have any preference about speaking to the VOTEC article?
No.
All right, let's not, unless there's questions. And then on 7, which is the school article, any board members feel the need to speak to this, or let the district do it?
District.
In the interest of brevity, let's let the school do it.
Mhm.
John, Jeff,
I agree.
I agree.
how with me? Article 8. CPC. I'm fine with just letting the CPC folks speak to this.
Mhm.
John and Jeff.
Same.
Yep.
I mean, they've taken the time to look at each of these proposals. I think that, yes, they should be.
All right.
Yep.
So CPC will speak to 8. We won't. So that's Articles 4 and 5, which are OpEx and CapEx. We'll pick speakers on those later. And 11 through 15, we'll pick the speakers later, and we'll assume that there will be speakers, except most likely not on Article 15, which we expect to be passed over.
Mhm.
And we'll make the decisions on speakers at our next meeting, with a meeting following that, with enough time to leave people room to write. Alan, do you have every piece of information that you need? Are you happy with this? Where are we at?
I think I have everything I need as of tonight, and I am happy with it, totally.
Greg?
I'm pretty good. I don't want to revisit too many things, but I did want to just raise the question of the starting time. As you went through the petition articles, I was getting nervous in terms of how quickly we're going to go through them. And I didn't know if we wanted to consider a 6 o'clock start instead of a 6:30.
Well, I don't have a vote, but I would support that.
I like 6.
Last year, when we discussed this, we went with 6:30 to allow people to be able to get there. I would think that that's even more true this year, where more people are going to be working out of an office this year, or out of a work site this year. As much as I'd like to see it at 6 o'clock, I think 6:30 should be the time. And that's a half an hour earlier than, well, it's 15 minutes earlier than we did traditional offices, half an hour earlier than we generally do the meeting.
Greg, your concern is that you're just looking at the agenda and saying this is going to take longer time?
It's the
Yeah,
petition.
I'm concerned about daylight.
Yeah, but it's the petition articles,
Mhm.
which are kind of wild cards a little bit. Yeah.
And the first half hour is more
Mechanical.
yeah, it's not the heart of the meeting in terms of the real substantive items. So, but I appreciate Jeff's comment. I don't want to make people feel like they can't participate if they have a work obligation.
I have mixed feelings. I think Greg's probably right. Those petition articles are going to kick us pretty hard, one way or the other. Quick, some of them might go really long.
I assume that the order is absolutely set. It would be nice.
You can change it right now.
It would be nice to deal with the Hamilton Road before we sink into the petition articles.
You can change the article tonight as any way you want, and the meeting can change the order by majority vote.
Why don't we make Article 16 Article 11?
Fine with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think by the time we get through all the petition articles, there's not going to be a lot of attention on Article 16.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect there may be flight toward the exit by then.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be darker and colder.
And buggier.
and buggier. And maybe foggier.
Most likely foggy, no matter what the meteorology is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I move that we renumber the articles, making number 16 number 11 and increasing the number of each subsequent up until 17, which will remain 17.
You got a second for that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right. As to the start time.
Eli, if I could just interject, sunset on the 21st, I believe, is at 8:22.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Alan, well, no, let's not. I was going to do one. Let's say the crystal ball thing, but let's not do that right now. Jeff, what the observation I was going to make for the consent calendar, which is going to fall first, and the preliminary aspects of the meeting will take a certain amount of time. And the consent calendar includes, I don't want to minimize it, but includes articles that I really kind of suspect that most people are not going to be wanting to hold the bus for. That's why they're in the consent calendar. So if those started at 6, if that meeting started at 6, and people did in fact get in a little late and missed some of the setup of the meeting, preliminaries, and maybe missed the consent calendar, I don't think they'd necessarily be super upset or really particularly, well, I mean, I don't want to go too far and say disenfranchised, but I don't think there's a deep concern there for me. What do you think about that?
I think that Alan's comments about how the meeting will run and how we will be addressing issues in this COVID environment are very important to people. And if they miss that because of what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying and I agree, but if they miss that because of that, does he repeat those after we do the consent calendar? I mean,
Right.
He's going to do it once and he's going to do it at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
And even though it's just logistics, they're important logistics to how this particular kind of meeting runs.
Yep.
That's a very good point, Jeff. And as
I respect Alan's ability to get that point across.
Well, and as I did last year, most of my opening comments will not be the usual ones that I make. They
Right.
will be comments on how this meeting is being run differently.
Yep.
So,
all right.
That's a good point.
Landing.
And there is lighting on the field, even though we don't want to go that late.
Right.
That field lights up real seriously.
And for those last articles that we might get to as it's getting darker, people don't need to be referring to their written materials, I don't think. Jeff, you changed my mind.
Sorry, no.
That's okay.
I don't like changing your mind.
All right, so we stick with 6:30. That's where we're landing, right?
Yes.
think so.
And what time did the meeting end last year? With a 6:30 start?
Oh, I'd have to check the minutes. I think it was,
8 o'clock.
yeah, it was, let me, bear with me for a second. I can actually look that up.
Yeah.
Thought it was an hour and 20, something like that.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, there will be more controversial issues here than last year. There were a couple
sure.
last year, but they didn't take a long time.
And there was like nothing which took any long time in the meeting last year.
Oh,
I mean, there was a brief hiccup in the budget and some, maybe a little bit of something in CPC, I don't remember.
Bear with me for a moment. $7:14.
yeah.
7:14,
45
45 minutes?
That's it, or 8:14? 7:14?
What the minutes say is 7:14.
Wow.
But I have to say that's a little hazy, and that may be wrong. Because we didn't, Diane and I have produced the minutes without the benefit of any notes taken at the meeting. So I'm guessing that probably is wrong, and it's probably more likely 8:14.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, we're not gonna get that lucky.
My recollection is that it wasn't 45 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't that fast.
No.
Yeah, it was fast, but
Yeah, not that fast.
So I think we'll be, given the petition articles, I think we'll be pushing darkness.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Are you suggesting, Alan, that we don't turn the lights on so that people move away?
or we can recommend bringing headlamps.
All right. I think we're reaching the point of diminishing returns, so I'm kicking around the time. I think we're still at 6:30, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And just dealing with it.
Yep.
All right. Any other business we need to cover with respect to budget and warrant before we move on?
I'll just mention that the motion for the previous question will be available.
Yeah. Well.
So Eli, we just need a final vote on the warrant.
Oh, that.
Alan, we as select board cannot move the question, Kevin. I've never seen it done.
That would be in extraordinarily poor taste.
When you,
well, not sure that, well, it'd be up to Alan, right?
there is no rule proscribing selectmen from moving the question. It's certainly within my discretion to move the debate along. If I see a lot of the same comments being made, for example, I can say, we've heard many comments that are similar. If you have something new to contribute to this discussion, please feel free. But if you're just going to repeat something that's already been said, maybe think twice about it.
Okay, I like that.
We'll see how it goes.
Can we have a hand signal? Just kidding. Just kidding. Exactly. Who has the shepherd's hook? Crook.
Blink the lights.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the annual town meeting warrant as amended by the discussion this evening?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Dix,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right, Greg, did we put the final period in?
Yes, just need you to swing by tomorrow if you could to sign both warrants. And we'll be in good shape.
Because they have to go off to the printers, so you really do have to swing by tomorrow.
I will be there tomorrow to sign.
Yeah.
Is tomorrow the day that we go to the front door, or is tomorrow a day that we go to the back door?
Back door.
Still at the back door, still at the back door.
Okay.
All right, Alan, we do still have a couple of other items on the town administrator's report. If you want to stay for those, you may. Otherwise, we really appreciate you coming tonight. Always nice to chat with you.
I appreciate your inviting me, and with nothing but respect for Greg, I will not stay for his report.
Thank you,
Okay.
Alan.
Thank
all
you,
very
Alan.
Thank you.
much. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Greg, back to probably not item 3. No, actually it is item 3.
So just a quick update, on staffing. Forward with Gail Hunter, so expanding her role and taking on the role of the ZBA and further down the road, the planning board. So we appreciate her willingness to step up to those duties. We will be bringing on board a new assistant town clerk within the week or so, and hope to have that confirmed tomorrow. And we will be advertising soon, putting a new job description together and advertising soon for a grant coordinator and special projects position, as well as getting ready to advertise for Jenny's replacement as our principal assessor. We have a little bit more time on that position. Jenny's retiring in the fall, but want to make sure we have plenty of lead time in finding her replacement. So that's where we are with some staffing updates. I mentioned town hall opening more generally next week from today. And then last item on my list here was the question of a pump track, temporary bike, what do I call them? Bike track at the old burn dump, I think has been resurrected a bit, was talked about with the Park and Rec. I think they felt that there were other higher priorities down the road that would have higher draw and more broad appeal. But I think it's been brought up again. So I don't know if there's an appetite to revisit it or not.
Has it been brought up again with Park and Rec?
Yes.
Has Park and Rec changed their position?
Greg, do you want to speak, or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Becky.
I had been reached out to again, as last time Park and Rec weighed in. It was felt that there would be something more permanent, again, as Greg said, down the road. Well, nothing's gone on there for several years now, and the person who's interested in it becoming a temporary pump track with nothing put in on a permanent basis, just instead of having it sitting fallow, let some of the local people use it. Actually, Max Warnock, who brought this to me, is on the call if anybody wants to ask him what it is he's asking for. But Cheryl said no plans for it, and it's really not her decision for the use of the land anyway.
So To recap for board members who may not have been involved in this last time around, this proposal was brought before the board. It went through a couple of rounds before the board, and it was, we asked Park and Rec to take a look at it. And at the time, Park and Rec came back with a very hard no on it because they had other things that they wanted to do. They were busy with other things, and they also were envisioning the potential of other uses for that particular piece of land. Now, if Park and Rec is changing their position, then I certainly would be, more supportive of it. But I would personally prefer that this come back to us through Park and Rec with a recommendation from Park and Rec. I don't want for us to go to Park and Rec and say, we want you to do this.
Eli, I can read you what Cheryl wrote to me, if that helps at all. I understand what you're saying, but just what you're.
So I got a problem with this process.
There isn't that because it didn't go through the proper process.
That's for sure. The proper process for this, to have a little bit of a discussion on it, like we're having right now. But the proper process for it is for it to have been brought to me and put on the agenda for discussion. And then I would have given some input about what data I wanted to be brought before the board. So that's what's going to happen. If this is going to get brought before us, this is going to get back, and that's going to get packaged up and sent to me, and it's going to get put on the agenda that way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the clarification. Max has been frustrated by the process, having reached out to a number of people and not heard anything. Granted, we've had some very important things going on. So
I understand that. I can sympathize with that, but there was a decision made a while ago.
Correct. Yep. There was but just to follow on that, the decision was made for more fields and that doesn't necessarily address
the conditions
everybody's needs.
But it doesn't change the process that should happen a second time around.
Correct.
So there shouldn't be frustration. There should just be, I have to deal with the process just another time around. I understand that there can be frustration, but we do need to stick to this.
I agree. Thank you very much. And I do agree.
All right. Greg, anything else?
I'm good, Eli. Thank you.
All right. I have no other matters as may not have been reasonably anticipated by me. Do any other board members have any comments? I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call vote. Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Yes.
Bob Return.
Yes.
Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right. Good night, folks. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks all.
Yep. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.